I asked my son and daughter-in-law a sim. Audio by Paper to Audio. I asked my son and daughter-in-law a simple question. When is the wedding? I needed to know so I could arrange a hotel room for my sister Pauline, who had been counting the days since the engagement announcement. She had already bought a dress. She had already started crying every time she thought about walking her nephew down the aisle. My daughter-in-law did not even look up from her phone. She was scrolling with one manicured thumb, her other hand absently twisting the stem of a crystal wine glass. She popped an olive into her mouth, chewed slowly, and said, "Oh, we got married yesterday, Gloria. Saturday afternoon. It was just for a certain kind of crowd. You know how these things are. It was curated." She used that word, curated, like I was a piece of furniture that didn't match the room. I sat there with my hands in my lap, stunned, looking around the beautiful apartment that I pay for every single month. The marble countertops. The pendant lighting that cost $400 a fixture. The view of the river through the floor-to-ceiling glass. All of it. Every inch of it. Paid for by the woman sitting across from them who apparently wasn't curated enough to witness her own son's wedding. 1 week later, she called me. She wasn't calling to apologize. She was calling because the rent was due and the payment hadn't processed. She was calling because the management company had sent a notice. She was calling because she needed $6,500 transferred immediately, today, right now, before the late fee kicked in. I gripped the phone. I felt something cold and crystalline settle in the center of my chest, and I whispered two words that I had been quietly planning all week. "Didn't I tell you?" But before I explain what happened when a 69-year-old retired florist from Cincinnati decided she had been a doormat long enough, I want to ask you something. Please hit the like button if you believe that dignity is not a luxury. Subscribe to this channel if you believe that the people who quietly build everything deserve to be seen. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from right now. What time is it there? I love knowing who is listening. It means more than you know. Now let me take you back to that Friday evening in early April when my world cracked in half. My name is Gloria Mee Whitfield. I am 69 years old, and I have soil permanently embedded under my fingernails that no amount of scrubbing will ever fully remove. 41 years of growing things. 41 years of rising before sunrise to get to the greenhouse. 41 years of wedding arrangements and funeral wreaths and birthday centerpieces, and the quiet, holy work of making living things beautiful enough for other people's important days. I built my flower shop, Whitfield Blooms, from a card table at a Saturday farmer's market into a business with 4 employees and a commercial greenhouse on the east side of the city. I did it without a business loan. I did it without a wealthy family. I did it one arrangement at a time, one season at a time, one decade at a time. If you passed me on the street, you would see an older woman with silver hair pinned up and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. You would see comfortable shoes and an apron with pockets. You would not see the woman behind the curtain. You would not see the investment portfolio. You would not see the property holdings. That is exactly how I prefer it. My son Daniel and his wife Cassandra are a different species entirely. Daniel is 34 and works in what he calls brand consulting, which from what I can observe means he attends lunches and sends emails about other people's social media strategies. Cassandra is 31 and identifies as a content creator, which means she photographs herself in beautiful locations and sells the resulting photographs to companies who want to seem aspirational. They are obsessed with image. They live for the aesthetic. It was a Friday evening in early April. I had driven 40 minutes from my house to the apartment building where Daniel and Cassandra live on the 14th floor, overlooking the river. The building has a doorman. The lobby has fresh flowers that I have noticed are always from a commercial wholesaler, never artisanal, which says something about who makes decisions in buildings like this. I was there because Daniel had invited me for dinner. Or rather, Cassandra had texted me the address and a time, which amounts to the same thing. The dinner was gorgeous. Cassandra had ordered from a restaurant I couldn't pronounce. The food was tiny and expensive and arranged on plates like small sculptures. I ate mine carefully, aware that I was in the presence of people who were performing a life rather than living one. I cleared my throat. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out the small notepad I always carry. I have been trying to pin down the wedding date, I said, keeping my voice light. Pauline already booked her time off work, and she wants to get the train tickets sorted before the prices go up. Just give me the month and I can handle the rest. I waited. I expected them to look at each other with the excited private smile of people planning something joyful. I expected someone to pull out a phone and open a calendar. Instead, the silence in the room grew dense. Daniel put down his fork. He picked it back up. He put it down again. He looked at the table as if the grain of the wood held an answer he was trying to find. Cassandra set her wine glass down with a precise, deliberate motion. She looked at me. The expression on her face was not unkind in the obvious way. It was something worse. It was patient. The kind of patience you offer to someone you have already decided does not require your full engagement. "Oh, Gloria," she said, "she never called me Mom. You can tell Pauline she doesn't need to worry about trains. The wedding was yesterday." The room did not move. I did not move. Some deeply calibrated internal system that had been running quietly inside me my entire life simply stopped. "Yesterday," I said. "Saturday afternoon," Cassandra confirmed, picking her wine glass back up. "At the Ashford estate. We kept it very selective, about 180 guests, but it was a very specific energy, very intentional." I turned to my son. My voice was almost not a voice at all. "Daniel, you got married yesterday and you didn't call me." Daniel looked at the table. His jaw moved without producing words. Cassandra answered for him. "We didn't want it to be complicated," she said. "You know how these gatherings get when the guest list is mixed. Different backgrounds, different comfort levels. We wanted cohesion." "Honestly, Gloria, you would have been uncomfortable. It was a very specific kind of event, and we were doing you a favor by not putting you in that position." She said it with such clean confidence. She said it as if she were describing a kindness. She said it as if the favor she was doing me was the exclusion, not the invitation. I looked at my son, the boy I had rocked through ear infections and driven to every school play and stayed up until 2 in the morning helping build a papier-mâché volcano for the science fair. The boy I had put through university while running the shop on 4 hours of sleep. The boy I had lent money to 4 separate times without ever once asking for a receipt. "Daniel," I said, "is that how you see it?" He finally looked at me. His face was red, and I could see the internal war happening behind his eyes, but he was losing it. "It just would have been a lot, Mom," he said. "Cassandra's family had a vision. The photographers, the guest list, everything was coordinated. We were going to have you over for brunch, something low-key, something more suited to—" He stopped himself. But I had already heard the rest of the sentence. Something more suited to what I was. Something more suited to the woman in the comfortable shoes who smelled faintly of soil and greenhouse fertilizer. Something more suited to the background character. Something more suited to the invisible infrastructure. I looked at Cassandra's hand on the stem of the wine glass. On her ring finger sat a diamond that I recognized immediately because I had paid for it. 6 months ago, Daniel had come to me quietly and told me he wanted to propose properly, that the ring he had in mind was beyond what he could manage right now, that he would pay me back. I had written a check for $38,000 without a moment of hesitation. I was staring at $38,000 of my money on the finger of a woman who had just told me I wasn't the right energy for her wedding. Something shifted inside me. It was not dramatic. There was no explosion. It was the quiet sound of a woman who has been in business for 41 years, recognizing a bad contract and deciding to exit cleanly. I placed my napkin on the table. I stood up. "Are you leaving?" Daniel asked, sounding startled. "You haven't finished." "Thank you for dinner," I said. "It was lovely." I picked up my handbag. I walked to the door. I did not slam it. In the elevator, I did not cry. I stood with my back straight and my hands folded around the strap of my bag, and I thought very clearly, the way I think when I am designing a complex arrangement and I need to decide what to cut and what to keep. I walked out through the lobby. The doorman held the door for me. The night air was cool and carried the faint green smell of the river. I stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the 14th floor. The windows were lit warm and gold against the dark sky. They were up there right now. probably relieved that the conversation was over, probably pouring another glass of wine, probably congratulating each other on how gracefully they had handled it. They did not know what kind of woman was standing on the sidewalk below them. They thought they knew Gloria Whitfield. They thought I was a sweet, lonely older woman with a flower shop and a soft heart who would absorb any indignity as long as it came with an occasional dinner invitation. They thought I was grateful. They thought I needed them more than they needed me. They had forgotten, or perhaps never bothered to learn, who actually signed the lease on that 14th floor apartment. I took out my phone. I called my attorney, a woman named Dr. Renata Osai, who had been handling my business affairs for 11 years. It was Friday night, and she answered on the second ring. "Gloria, is everything all right?" "Renata," I said, "I need you to pull the file on the River District property. The Marlowe Building, Unit 1407. A brief pause. "That's Daniel's apartment. The lease renewal is in 6 weeks. "I know," I said. "I need you to pull it tonight." "Are you sure about this?" I looked up at the warm golden window one last time. "I want the automatic renewal canceled," I said, "and I want you to prepare a notice of non-payment for the current cycle. The transfer I scheduled for the first of the month hasn't gone through yet." "Gloria," her voice was careful, "that's your son." "He's also my tenant," I said, "and I'm realizing I've been confusing the two." 3 days of silence passed. I was in my greenhouse on Monday morning, transplanting hydrangea seedlings, when my phone began to vibrate against the potting bench. Cassandra's name on the screen, not Daniel's, Cassandra's. She wasn't calling to apologize. I knew that from the cadence of the vibration, the way it felt too urgent, too purposeful. She was calling because the first of the month was 4 days away, and the usual transfer from my account had not appeared in their portal. I let it ring 4 times, then I answered. "Cassandra," I said. My voice was warm and a little vague, the voice of a woman who has been happily occupied with plants all morning and has not been thinking about anything in particular. "Gloria," her voice was tight and clipped. "The rent portal is showing an issue. The automatic payment hasn't preloaded. We need to know if there is a problem with your account because if the transfer doesn't clear by Thursday, there is a late fee and it goes on record." I continued pressing a seedling into fresh soil with my thumb. "I'm aware of the schedule," I said pleasantly. "So is it coming?" she demanded. 6,500, is it being processed?" I set the seedling down and brushed the soil from my hands. "I've been meaning to talk to you and Daniel about finances," I said. "Things have been a little complicated on my end. The shop had a difficult quarter, you know how it is in winter. My accountant has me tightening things up." The silence on the other end was sharp-edged. "Gloria," her voice had dropped to something cold and measuring. "We have a lease. We have a life built around a certain arrangement. You can't just decide to." "I'm not deciding anything," I said. "I'm just letting you know that I need a little more time this month. You two are both professionals. I'm sure it won't be a problem to cover things temporarily." The sound that came out of her then was not language. It was the sound of a person who has never been told no in a financial conversation, suddenly encountering the concept for the first time. "We don't have $6,500 liquid right now," she said, each word bitten off separately. "We spent significantly on the wedding. Our accounts are in transition, you know this. You have always handled the rent. That was the agreement." "I remember," I said. "Then handle it," she snapped. "I'll see what I can do," I said. And I hung up. I set the phone face down on the potting bench. My hands were steady. I picked up the next seedling. Later that evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and opened my laptop. I was not on social media. I had never seen the point, but I knew enough to understand that Cassandra built her entire identity on public visibility. Her content creator life depended on people seeing her, following her, believing in the version of herself she projected. I typed her name into the search bar. Her profile was public, of course. Every square inch of it was public. That was the whole enterprise. I scrolled through photos from Saturday. The wedding was not small. The wedding was not intimate. The wedding was not a quiet, curated gathering of 180 carefully selected energies. The wedding was an extravaganza. Drone footage of a stone estate surrounded by flowering gardens. A reception hall hung with thousands of white orchids. Tables set with gold leaf china. A 7-tier cake wrapped in sugar flowers so intricate they looked real. I recognized the flowers, by the way. I recognized them professionally. The arrangements were beautiful, expensive, and sourced from a large commercial supplier. They lacked the irregularity of the handmade, the imperfection that makes a real flower arrangement feel alive. I scrolled further. A video, posted the morning after the wedding. Cassandra's father, a man in a white tuxedo holding a microphone, standing on a small stage surrounded by candles. I pressed play. "To my daughter and her remarkable husband," he said, his voice booming with self-satisfaction. "Daniel is the kind of man who built himself, a self-starter, a visionary. No silver spoons, no family money, no old-world connections to lean on, just ambition and talent and my daughter's good taste in choosing him. Welcome to the family, son. You have earned your place here entirely on your own merits." Applause. Daniel standing up, his face flushed with pleasure, his hand on his heart, accepting the words like a man who had never received a $38,000 check from his mother. I closed the laptop. I sat for a long time in the quiet of my kitchen. Outside, my neighbor's wind chimes moved in the evening air. I thought about the Saturday before last, when I had spent 12 hours on my feet in the shop doing the spring wedding rush, because April is always the worst month for volume and the best month for flowers, and every bride in the Tri-County area wanted something with tulips. I had come home with my feet aching and my lower back tight, and I had eaten toast for dinner because I didn't have the energy to cook. And I had gone to bed thinking about my son's wedding and wondering if I had the right shade of ivory ribbon for the buttonholes. I had been planning a gift. I had been planning a speech. I had been planning to embarrass myself in the best possible way, crying in the front row in my good dress, the one I bought 3 years ago for my niece's graduation and had been saving. Instead, I was watching my son accept applause for the fiction of his self-sufficiency, while wearing a suit I had probably contributed to buying. I was not angry. Or rather, I was angry in the way a master craftsperson is angry when a piece of work they have spent years on is dropped carelessly on the floor. It was the anger of wasted investment. The cold, lucid anger of someone who understands exactly what has been lost and exactly what must be done next. I opened the laptop again. I called Renata. "Cancel the transfer entirely," I said, "and I want to begin the non-renewal process for the lease." 2 days before the first of the month, I was delivering a standing order of peonies to a hotel lobby downtown when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button. "Mom," Daniel's voice. Thin and scared in a way I hadn't heard since he was 12 years old and had broken his arm falling out of the oak tree in the backyard. I felt the old instinct flare, the mother instinct, the one that has no logic and no ledger and no sense of proportion. "Daniel," I said, "what's wrong?" "I'm at the medical center," he said. "Mercy General. I've been having chest pain for 2 days and Cassandra made me come in and they're saying it might be my heart. Something with the rhythm. They want to do tests. They might need to do a procedure, Mom. They're talking about a procedure." My throat tightened. The hotel lobby, the peonies, the doorman standing nearby, all of it fell away. "I'm coming," I said. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Wait," he said quickly. "Wait, you can't see me yet. They're still running tests. I'm not allowed visitors until they complete the initial workup. But Mom, there's a problem." He paused. I heard him take a breath. "Our insurance lapsed," he said. "We switched providers after the wedding and there's a gap in coverage, and this hospital requires a deposit for specialized cardiac procedures. They're saying $45,000. Mom, I need you to transfer it to my account right now so I can pay the admissions desk. They said they can't start the procedure without it, and I might not." He stopped. "I might not have a lot of time," he finished. I stood very still in the hotel lobby. The peonies were still in my arms. They smelled of early summer, of something uncomplicated and true. I thought about the voice on the other end of the phone. I thought about the way it had started scared and then shifted gear when the request arrived. I thought about the specific dollar amount, 45,000, which was not coincidentally close to the amount I had given him for the engagement ring. I thought about the logistics of a hospital requiring a personal bank transfer to a patient's account rather than a direct payment to the billing department. I thought about Cassandra. "Daniel," I said, "which room are you in?" A brief pause. "They haven't assigned me a room yet, I'm in a corridor." "What corridor?" Another pause, slightly longer. "I don't know the number, it's all been so fast." "What's the name of the admitting physician?" Silence. I set the peonies down on the concierge desk. I walked outside. I stood on the sidewalk and I took a breath of cool air and I made a decision. I had a friend, Patricia, who had been head of nursing administration at Mercy General for 15 years before she retired. I called her. I asked her to make a quiet inquiry. Discreet, just a check. She called me back in 8 minutes. No patient by the name of Daniel Whitfield had been admitted or registered at Mercy General. There was no cardiac workup. There was no procedure pending. There was no corridor. Patricia said she hoped everything was okay. She said to call if I needed anything. I thanked her, I hung up. I stood on the sidewalk with the city moving around me, and I felt the last structural beam of something very old and very important give way inside my chest. Not with a crash, with a quiet, final creak. My son had tried to use the fear of his own death to take $45,000 from me. That was not a mistake. That was not desperation in the abstract. That was a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice about what kind of person he was willing to be and what he believed I was willing to tolerate. I called Renata. "Renata," I said, "I want to accelerate the timeline on the Marlowe building unit." She didn't ask questions. She had been my attorney for 11 years. "I'll have the formal notice prepared by tomorrow morning," she said. "And Renata," I said, "I want to tell you something. I own the Marlowe building through the holding company. Daniel has never asked about the holding company. He has never asked about my portfolio. He has never asked about anything that did not arrive in his bank account as a number. He does not know that his landlord and his mother are the same person." A long silence. "Gloria," Renata said softly, "are you sure you want to do this?" "I have never been more sure of anything," I said. "He told the world he is self-made. I am going to give him the opportunity to prove it." The notice was delivered on a Thursday morning. Heavy paper, official letterhead, the name of my holding company, Whitfield Property Holdings, printed at the top in clean, authoritative font. Notice of lease, non-renewal, and demand for possession. I was not there when it arrived, but I had hired a property manager named Theodore who was thorough and professional, and who had slid that envelope under their door at 9 in the morning, as instructed. By 9:15, I had received 8 missed calls from Daniel. By 9:30, Cassandra had moved to texting, each message arriving in rapid, escalating succession. "This is illegal. We have a lease." "You can't do this. We know people." "Fine, if you want to play games, call us back." "Gloria, please call back. This is serious." "Call US." I was repotting a bird of paradise when I finally called back. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the bench beside me and continued working. Daniel answered before the first ring had fully sounded. "Mom," his voice had abandoned all pretense. He sounded young and frightened and genuinely undone in a way that I found I could observe now with something like clinical compassion. "Mom, what is this letter?" "Whitfield Property Holdings. That's the company that owns our building. Why do they have the same last name as us? Is this you? Is this your company?" "Yes," I said. A long, absolute silence. "You own our building," he said. "I own 4 buildings," I said. "The Marlowe is one of them. I bought it 14 years ago. The holding company is structured separately from the shop for tax purposes. You never asked about my business affairs." More silence. Then I heard Cassandra's voice in the background, sharp and demanding, and then Daniel's voice coming back, strained and disbelieving. "You've been our landlord this whole time," he said. "You've been paying yourself." "I've been paying the holding company, which manages expenses and returns for the properties," I said. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell us?" I pressed my thumb gently into the soil, around the bird of paradise root. You never asked, I said. You never asked me about my work. You asked me about my shop sometimes, in the way that one mentions a hobby. You never asked about my investments, my properties, my financial history, or how I had managed to fund the life I was living. You accepted the money and you made assumptions about the source, and you never inquired further. The silence that followed was the silence of a man standing at the edge of something very large and very empty. Mom, Daniel said. His voice had changed again. Something raw and young was surfacing through it now, something that I recognized as the beginning of real reckoning. I lied to you about the hospital. I was at a spa. Cassandra said she told me it would work, that you wouldn't check, that you never check. The bird of paradise settled into its new pot. I know, I said. Are you angry? I thought about the question honestly. I am sad, I said. I am sad that you became a person who would do that. I don't think that person is who you actually are. I think that person is who you became when you let someone else define your worth by their comfort with your origins. Daniel made a sound that was very close to crying. Cassandra left, he said. This morning, after the letter came. She called her parents and they sent a car and she took most of her things and she went. I held the phone for a moment. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it, not for my part in it, but for the reality of what had been built and what was now falling. What do I do? He asked. And it was the first time in years, genuinely, sincerely, without an agenda, that my son had asked me for something that wasn't money. You have 30 days before the notice takes effect, I said. Use that time to find something within your actual means. Find a room, find a roommate, find whatever is real. Get a job that requires showing up. Stop consulting and start doing. You are 34 years old and you are not broken. You are just soft in places that should be strong. Will you help me? He asked. No, I said. Not financially, not anymore, but I will answer the phone when you call. That offer stands indefinitely. He was quiet. The toast your father-in-law gave, I said. He said you were self-made. He said you built yourself without any advantages. I want that to be true, Daniel. I want it to be true more than I wanted anything at that wedding I wasn't invited to. So go build something true. Build it with your own hands. It will be the most important thing you ever make. 3 weeks later. I am standing in the greenhouse on a Tuesday morning in early May. The sun is coming through the glass panels at the low, early angle that makes everything look like it's lit from the inside. Around me are 412 square feet of growing things, things that require patience and attention and a willingness to work in silence for long periods before anything blooms. I have sold the Marlowe building. The buyers are a young couple, she is an engineer, he is a social worker, who want to convert 2 units into affordable housing for working families. They paid a fair price. The proceeds have gone into a fund administered by Renata, one I have been establishing quietly for the past 6 months. The Gloria Whitfield Trades Fellowship. It will fund apprenticeships and tool grants and continuing education for people entering the horticultural trades, florists, landscapers, greenhouse growers, nursery workers, people who work with their hands, who make living things beautiful, who are invisible until someone needs a wedding arrangement, and then are quickly forgotten again once the flowers have been moved to the reception tables. The first cohort of fellows begins in September. There are 12 of them. I have read every application myself. My sister Pauline is coming to visit next weekend. We are going to plant the back garden together, the way we used to do when we were girls helping our mother with her flower beds. We are going to drink too much tea and talk about things that don't cost anything. My phone rings. It is Daniel. He has been calling every few days. The calls have been different lately. Shorter, less desperate, quieter. He has moved into a shared house on the west side with 2 other men around his age. He has taken a position as a junior coordinator for a local events company, actual events, actual logistics, actual work. He told me last week that he is tired in a way he has never been tired before, and that it feels, somehow, like the right kind of tired. I answer on the second ring. Morning, I say. Morning, Mom. His voice sounds like a person who slept on a normal mattress and got up at a normal hour and is making their own coffee. I was just calling, nothing specific. I found some of my old drawings from when I was a kid, from when I used to draw those floor plans. Remember, I wanted to be an architect. I remember, I said. You were very precise. I was thinking about going back to school, he said. Part-time, maybe just a few classes, I don't know, it's probably stupid. It's not stupid, I said. I can't ask you to. I'm not offering, I said, and I kept my voice gentle. But I'm telling you it's not stupid. The rest is yours to figure out. A pause. Mom, he said, I'm sorry about the wedding, I'm sorry about all of it. I know it doesn't fix anything. No, I said, it doesn't fix it, but it's a start. The greenhouse around me hummed, with the specific quiet of growing things. Can I come see the shop sometime? He asked. Not to ask for anything, I just want to see it. I don't think I ever actually looked at it, what you built. I looked around me, at the hydrangeas, at the bird of paradise in its new pot, at the 41 years of early mornings and cold winters and soil and growth. Saturday, I said, come Saturday, I'll teach you how to build an arrangement. I hung up the phone. I picked up my pruning shears. Outside the greenhouse, through the glass, the morning was doing exactly what mornings do, arriving reliably, without fanfare, asking nothing, offering everything. I had been a flower shop owner for 4 decades. I knew something that every gardener eventually learns. You cannot grow anything in soil that has never been turned. You cannot build a life worth living in ground that has never been broken. Sometimes the most loving thing a person can do is remove the shelter that has been preventing the storm. Because without the storm, there is no growth. Without the breaking open, there is no beginning. I was not a mobile wallet. I was not a shadow. I was not a woman who didn't fit the curated aesthetic. I was Gloria Me Whitfield. I had been building things with my hands since before my son was born, and I intended to keep building long after he had finally found his own footing. The shears moved through the stem of an overgrown rose cane, with one clean, decisive cut. Just like that. The hardest arrangements I ever made were not for weddings. They were not for grand events with photographers and drone footage and 7-tier cakes. The hardest arrangements were the ones where I had to decide what to remove, where I had to look at something I loved and say, this branch is taking the energy the rest of the plant needs to survive. Loving someone does not mean funding every version of them, including the versions that are diminishing them. True love is not always the transfer. Sometimes it is the termination. Sometimes it is the empty pot, the cleared soil, and the faith that something real might finally grow in the space you have made. If this story reached something in you, please leave a like. Subscribe for more stories about quiet strength and earned dignity. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to remove something you loved in order to protect something you valued more? I would love to hear from you. You have reached the end of the text.